Hi, I'm Alicia. I study sustainable value chains in the Netherlands, and over the past 8 weeks I've been in India on my internship, setting up a learning journey across the value chain of cotton for Western designers, and this is all about how it went down. I'm gonna take you through all of the time I spent in India. Right from the moment I hopped on a plane, went to India, arrived, and then all of the places I visited along the way, which are quite a few, and it was stressful. It was really. I'm leaving to India within 12 hours. It's only been 6 weeks that I've known that I'm going to India, so it's crazy. It's almost here. This is the notebook that knows everything. It contains a map where I plotted out the route I took throughout India, and it helped me on the way to see where I was and where I was going. And it's really cool to look back at it and see where I was. I didn't really have any expectations, and there was nothing really figured out. So what happened is I arrived in Hyderabad. And there was one thing that was sure when I was arriving in Hyderabad, and that is that I was going to work in Chetna Organics office for a few days before I was headed to a village in Orissa. That's all I knew. After that, everything was insecure. I was basically just going into it blank. I didn't really have any sort of idea what I was getting myself into. Also because I'd only known 6 weeks that I was gonna do it, so I was not afraid, to be honest, because I knew that Gijs was there, which is my supervisor, which was actually not there with me, so I was going to do it alone, and he lives in the south of India. But I was just going to be in regular contact with him, and I was going to do it individually. He would send me the contacts that I could get in contact with and that could possibly help me visit some parts of the chain. And then from that moment on, it was on me, and I was in charge of what I was going to do and how to get there. And it all turned out to be fine, but I had quite some struggles that I got myself into and that I overcame. And yeah, I'm just gonna tell a few of them as we go along. I was headed to Bhawanipatna on Monday, but there were no tickets, no information whatsoever. So I had a hotel, so that's where I went. And the days that followed, I basically was in the office, got to know the Chetna Organic people, and then prepared my travels to Bhawanipatna. I'm losing my patience with these animals. And that same evening I had to get on the train, and I was actually quite nervous, and I really had no idea what to expect from the train, because people told me it was a good experience, and then other people told me it was really the worst experience they ever had. But it turned out to be a great social place where you meet people, you can talk about their lives, and they share their food with you and their stories. The bed was actually great. I had a great night of sleep. It was all in all a great experience. And I met this little cute boy on the train. And we shared a bag of chips and some Coke, and we laughed a lot. So at first I was sleeping above Chetna's office, but the police wanted me to sleep in a hotel because I needed to stay in a registered place. And the police would not let me go to the fields until today. I'm not sure why, but no, they would not let me go. So instead we went to Chetna's eco center, where one of my colleagues organized that a few farmers came together, and so I was able to interview 5 farmers about the effects of organic farming and about how they were able to grow in the ladder within Chetna's sort of system. And in the eco center, different types of cotton are tested and different types of composting are shown so the farmers can come and learn. And I learned a lot about border, inter, and trap cropping. And all in all, it was a really interesting experience. When we left the eco center, we stopped on the side of the road somewhere. And so I didn't meet a farmer, I just saw the cotton plant, and I was able to stand in the fields. After I walked a little bit through the fields, my feet were so dirty, but it was such a great experience to finally sort of see the plant and be in the field. And yeah, it's like sort of a dream came true, I think. The next day, Chetna organized a visit to a ginning plant for me, and it was out of use because of the season, but it was actually quite good, so I could just wander around in the factory a little bit and sort of wonder what it's like when it's actually in use. The next footage shows some of the process of the ginning. On Saturday, I got invited by one of my colleagues to spend a day with her and her family, and we went shopping, and her brother took me around town. And we had a meal together and took some photos, and it was really great to actually be part of a family and see how they live, see the place. And because the whole week I'd actually just been in my hotels at night without any internet access for my laptop or whatsoever, so I was just sort of alone. So it was good to be with the family. The next day it was time for me to go back to Hyderabad, so I took the train back for 18 hours and I arrived back on Monday morning. Time I went grocery shopping, I needed to cross this street, and in the beginning it was such a disaster. I didn't really want to cross it, I sort of tried to avoid it, but there was no way around it, so in the end I sort of learned to step behind certain people, to sort of walk with them when they would cross, and that worked out most of the time. I've been here for a week and 3 days, and I'm sick. I've not eaten food in 3 days. There's my refrigerator. Independence Day, so I took an Uber this morning, went to the flag hoisting in a park. The flag was already there, it actually didn't happen, but then I met 2 Australian girls, which was really nice. We went to the flag together and took some pictures, so I wasn't alone, but then when we were at the statue, a lot of guys started asking selfies, and after a while the girls had to leave, and they said to me, don't take selfies with all the guys, because I needed to wait for a few other friends. And so I was alone in the park, and I just had to wait for a little while, but seriously, every minute a guy walked up to me and asked for a picture. And I just felt watched and uncomfortable, so I wanted to leave. So it's frustrating, but you know, it's a thing that will pass. So the illness is not the worst thing. I think the worst thing is I don't feel safe when I'm alone outside. Last week when I was in Odessa, I just realized I've not been outside of the hotel on my own. Every time a driver came into the hotel, walked me to the car, opened the door for me so I could get in, and which is great actually. I mean, I never felt unsafe in Odessa because there was always someone there. There's no one here that I know, for real. So tomorrow is a day again at the office, so I hope tomorrow I'm feeling a little better, and yeah, I could move on soon, because I just don't feel safe outside. After this, I spent a few days in Chetna's office researching Chetna and some common problems within the fashion industry. And when I was talking to a colleague, we talked about a chance to go to Adilabad, which is another field office of Chetna. And I got the opportunity to go there. And so I prepared for that. I booked my tickets. I got in contact with someone there and sort of talked about what we were going to do. And meanwhile, I ate a lot of junk food because it was the only thing my stomach liked. After a few days, I took the 10-hour train to Adilabad, and after an hour drive there, I arrived in Utnur. And I was so early that there was no one in the office, so I had some time to wander around and organize my room. Because I was sleeping next to the office, and a few rats kept us company during the day and during the night, so we slept with the light on. And that same day we actually drove to the fields because the police allowed me to go there. I had to hand in a questionnaire at every local police station. In the fields I was able to interview a few farmers, and I saw their fields, so I actually visited the fields with the farmers. The evenings I spent in the office chilling or just calling my mom or some friend. We paid a visit to an organic village where we attended a village meeting, and where I was able to interview the head of the village, but also some women, which I was really looking forward to and which I had waited for, so I could ask them questions about equality and how they felt about being a farmer and what their days looked like. In the afternoon, I interviewed the head of a producer company and visited his family, had some tea, and he showed me some of the tools that are used in the field. We decided to also visit the local eco-center, and I stood in the soon-to-be office and walked around with a soil expert who was basically willing to answer all of my questions. And in the afternoon I wrote out my transcripts and had some fun with my colleagues. On one of my last days we visited a nearby village using the motorbike, and I interviewed a group of male farmers about the organic cotton value chain and their knowledge of it, which was really interesting. I had a really fun last night with my colleague Gayatri, who actually gifted me a sari that I obviously had to try out on the same evening. On the last day I did some paperwork, and after making it into the newspaper it was time to return to Hyderabad. Upon arrival in Hyderabad I basically just returned to my hotel where I was staying before. I came into contact with Anil before I went to Adilabad, and so we stayed in contact a little bit, and then after I returned from Adilabad I thought it was time to leave Chetna Organic and go to a different organization and see how it worked over there. So I spent around a week in Chetna's office finishing off some of the project analysis, and I did some interviews in the office in order to get some more information on how everything worked. But then I left for Vijayanagram, where I was going to meet up with Sharat, the vice president from Gramina Vikas Kendram, who was willing to show me a recently set up project with 40 new organic cotton farmers. I was really excited for this because I had seen Chetna's way of working, but because Chetna is already working with around 35,000 farmers, it is hard to see what it's like to start up something new. But what we were going to do in Vijayanagram is we were going to interview the farmers and basically create a baseline for the new project. We actually planned out to 2 villages on the first day, so the smallest villages. So that was around, I think, 15 farmers. And then we planned to spread the third village across 2 days, so the second and the third day. What actually happened is on the first day we went to the first village, which was sort of we had a hard time arranging the farmers, but they came after a while. And then we interviewed them and it was all right. We sort of had the feeling they were lying about certain things, or not telling the full truth. It was sort of a gut feeling we had. The second village we went to was actually great. A lot of farmers showed up. We sat down with the villagers around, I think we started off with 4 villagers and ended up with around 10 farmers that were participating in the program. And Sharat just translated the questions into the local language and then translated 5 of the answers to me. So I wrote down 5 and he wrote down 5. So we did it as a group interview. And that worked out amazing. We had a lot of information that we could use. The next morning we actually wanted to process the information of the night before, but there was a power break and it actually lasted the whole morning and part of the afternoon, so we could not do it. And there was nothing else to do, so we waited. And in the afternoon we went to the third village. And the day before we arranged that all the farmers would be there at 4 o'clock. So we arrived at 4 o'clock and there were 0 farmers. Sharat actually already expected this. I expected some farmers to be there. I still had hope. But we ended up waiting, I think, for around 1.5 to 2 hours. And then we decided to go into the fields and check them out. And I actually met Maria, which is a girl who's the same age as me. She's 20 as well. And she's sort of an informant of Gramina, you could say. She knows all the farmers and she can get along with all of them, so she passes on the information if that's necessary. So it was really nice to meet up with her and sort of see how different our lives are whilst we are the same age. Then we waited and waited and waited. And nothing happened. So Sharat started to talk with the farmers and talk with the villagers and try to sort of persuade them to come to our meeting. He actually played the foreigner card, but it didn't help, so they didn't even want to see me. I was not like sort of the factor that would get them there. That didn't work out. So what we ended up, I think at around 7 o'clock, we had like 3 farmers. So we just started the interview, but it just wouldn't go. It just wouldn't go like we wanted it to if you already had some alcohol in their bodies. And so they actually didn't really give us good answers. So at a certain point, Sharat decided to teach them how to make organic pesticide with neem leaves. In the afternoon, we actually got the neem leaves, but we had to get them from the branches. And when the branches are left, the thing they do is they make toothbrushes out of it. And I started doing this with all of the women from the village, which was a sort of a really special moment for me. And it was cool to see Sharat working with the people and teaching them something that they can actually use in their own fields. It was really inspirational to me to sort of see how humble he was and how sort of sweet, and he really sort of included everyone, including the women, to get them to learn and to teach them. And it was really good to see it and sort of observe and see how he does it and then apply it myself when it's my time. And we actually decided to stop interviewing completely because we just didn't get any useful answers, and a few were partly drunk, so you know, it just wouldn't work. And we also decided to not go back the next day because it wouldn't be any different from the day before. And so we weren't successful in doing the 40 farmers in 3 days. The farmers were just not interested in us. I don't know why. Maybe because it's the first sort of season they're growing the organic cotton and they still need to see the first result. But it would be nice if you have a baseline so you can compare the differences later on. But too bad it didn't work, but I still felt really useful. When I look back at it, I feel like Shanagram is possibly my favorite few days, because I was actually doing something for the organization instead of constantly working on my own project. It was really nice to sort of help other people and see how they work and really learn from them. I think it was a really useful experience. So after I visited this Anvita Organic program of Gramina Vikas Kendram, I decided to go to the head office where I would meet up with Anil. And this was also the moment that I realized that I was getting really tired of just traveling. I really wanted to work, but on the other hand, I also sort of wanted to chill, so it was hard for me to sort of balance this out. But I was in the office, I think, for around 4 days. Anil and I had a lot of conversations about life, but also about social entrepreneurship. It grabbed me, and I really started thinking about my own role in all of this that I'd seen. On the second day that I was in Karapa, I was able to visit the Sweet Orange program. So we hopped on a bus, traveled for about like 3 hours, and we arrived in the field where I was able to see the place where they store the small sweet oranges, which are actually full of hesperidin, which is a pharmaceutical substance. So it is sold to a French pharmaceutical company. Because of that, it's really profitable to the farmers. The farmers can possibly double their income, but they can also create job opportunities for local women. So I decided to leave Karapa after a week because there was not really anything to do for me in the sense of cotton production. So I left, but I had an amazing time with Anil, speaking to him and just learning a lot from him. And I headed towards Auroville, where Gijs, my supervisor, lives. I actually barely spoke to Gijs in the first 7 weeks. So after 7 weeks I arrived at his place. I emailed him a few times. We never spoke on the phone. So we actually hadn't really had a conversation since before I left. So we had a lot to talk about, and that is what we did. And he shared some of his experiences and I shared mine. Whilst I was in Auroville the first day, I was actually able to meet up. Whoop, that was a raindrop. I was actually able to meet up with Ilamurgu, who is a sourcer within sort of the cotton production. So when you want a t-shirt, you can go to him and ask him for advice and he can arrange it for you. So I met up with him and he said he was able to bring me to the factories in Tirupur, which was great. So we spoke about it and he said he could arrange it, and we were actually planning on going on Monday. We ended up going on Friday. So I was in Auroville for 1.5, 2 days, and then we had to leave. After 7 or 8 hours by bus, we arrived in Tirupur, but we didn't have a hotel yet, so at 5 in the morning we walked around the city and looked for a hotel. We finally found one, got some hours of sleep, and then in the morning Ilamurgu tried to arrange some factory visits, and we were able to get into a production plant. And the following footage shows some of this plant. And I was especially sort of intrigued by the noises that you hear inside these buildings, sort of the noises of the sewing machines. And you know, I've seen this in documentaries and I was never thinking that I could ever see it in real life. Sort of, I could never see myself doing it because I didn't know it was possible. And I dreamed of it, and I told Gijs I would like to do it, and he said this is possible, and we made it happen. And I was in one of the factories, and it was surreal, really, and I couldn't really express myself because Ilamurgu was looking at me like, what are you talking about? But yeah, it just sort of made me happy, whilst also being really interested, whilst also seeing things that weren't right. So it was mixed feelings all over the place. In the afternoon we went to a dyeing plant, and it was an interesting process, and there was also a really interesting sort of reuse of water. I was especially shocked by how unprotected the people were. They weren't. Some of them weren't wearing shoes. They were obviously not wearing masks or sort of headpieces or whatever. They were wearing no protection whatsoever. And as you can see in this shot, there's a lot of sort of chemicals going on. And on Sunday, Ilamurgu arranged a visit to a printing plant, which was open on Sunday because they had to finish an order, so they worked on Sunday, whilst they normally don't work on Sunday. So we were able to get in and take a look, and I was shocked by the amount of waste that is thrown outside and simply thrown into nature, and that is affecting everything around Tirupur. The head of this printing plant was actually really open about the effects of it. He just told us about all the cancer that the people get in the city. Basically, if you're born in Tirupur, you will die early because of all the things that are in the air and in the soil and the things you drink that are in your water. And it's just, it shocked me. I know it's happening, but it's weird to see it in real life, smell the chemicals and the paint, and leave the factory with a headache. And then imagining that these people are in that every single day, day after day, and they cannot do anything about it because it simply is their life and there's not really any other option. And I couldn't really talk about this with Ilamurgu because our levels of English are different, and I didn't have the idea that he understood what I was really sort of thinking all the time. So So I just left it at that and tried to process it myself. He took me to someone that actually draws out the patterns on the textile. He plots out how pieces of clothing need to be cut out of a piece of textile in order to make it as efficiently as possible. When we went to a weaving plant, there was a lot of noise, so we could barely hear each other, and let alone working in that every day. You must lose all your hearing within, I don't know. It's weird to see that there is no protection in these factories that have these labels that should secure that it is all safe. These guys are working 12 hours a day doing this, putting thread into needles every single day, day after day, 12 hours a day. It's crazy. And the knitting plant was actually quite normal. I thought it was quite technically on point, quite high quality. So I saw people working without protection again, whilst there is a lot of dust in the air. On Tuesday, Ilumurgo and I both got sick, and we still tried to get into a spinning mill. It didn't really work out. So we took the bus back to Auroville, and I sneaked into Gijs's house at 5 at night. Where I'm at now is a place called Auroville, which is a place that was originally set up for human unity and where a lot of Western people gathered together to live together. And at the moment I'm in the middle of the forest, and I have the opportunity to live here for 1 week. And I've been writing and doing projects, and yeah, basically finishing off all the work that I didn't have time for while I was traveling. So what the point is now is I'm just sort of really out of motivation. And I don't really know why. I think just my body and my body is tired, I think, of everything that it had to go through over the past 8 weeks. I just lost track of time. Also because everywhere I went I only had to be there for like 4 or 5 days, so you focus on the 4 or 5 days and then you travel and you move on and you do the exactly the same thing in the other places. And continuously I was sort of working on what I had to do and what I had to prepare, and my mind was never off the internship. I was always working on it. I was always preparing my next travels because nothing was arranged beforehand. So whilst I was here I arranged it. I had meetings with people. I tried to see what they could do for me. And so it was tiring. It was really tiring. And I think that is probably the thing that my body is still processing, all of it. I feel like that is maybe something that I really underestimated. Just the impact it would have on my body. Not even on my mind, but my body. Which I realize now that my body is not endless. It needs its rest. And after 7 weeks of traveling, I'm done, you know, so I'm really happy I can be here. But I would like to get work done. It's really haunting me, all of the projects I have to finish, which I started early on, but then over the past 4 weeks I just didn't have time to do anything of it because I was traveling so much. And yeah, I don't know. But it's beautiful here, honestly. It's great. It's now 8 weeks ago that I started. I've been writing my reports for the last few days, and I've really sort of been reflecting on what I've been doing, and I'm seeing that I've still not processed it all. So in my head it sort of still is this big clunch of information that I have that I'm not really sure what to do with. So I'm still processing. And I realized after around 7 weeks that my body sort of told me to stop, because that was the span it had of energy to take all the traveling, the constant changes of 1,000 kilometers over more than 5,000 kilometers over the past 7 weeks. And it's been crazy. I've been loving most of it, but it was I cried a lot, let's leave it to that, especially in the first few days in Hyderabad when I was just feeling alone and I didn't know what to expect. So, yep. And I'm videoing this now whilst I'm in Auroville, so my last sort of stadium of the internship. I'm gonna finish it here. This is where my supervisor lives. I'm gonna try to finish my reports. But the thing is that I can barely write anything useful because I'm sort of, my head is so full, and I've been trying to sort of write it out, talk it out. But every time I talk about it, I get more ideas and think of new things that I would want to improve or want to see. So that's not really working out well for me. But still, I'm relaxing here. I think it's good to sort of rest, and to also give myself that rest. Until now I've not really been successful at giving myself rest, which is sort of a leading point throughout the whole thing as well. I think what I've seen myself do is just sort of exhaust myself by taking all of this information in and not processing it properly, because there's also not a lot of people you can talk to. I mean, because I've been traveling so much, I've not established strong relationships. It's all sort of short working relationships that I have everywhere. So I am in Auroville vlogging in the middle of the forest. It's so awesome here. I had some sandals made this morning. And I feel so at home, so at ease with everything that is happening here. I feel good here, I feel happy. And I thought to myself, I'm really sort of happy I ended up here and glad that it worked out like this. Yeah. And tomorrow ends my internship, and I'm kind of sad. I'm kind of sad it's ending. I was just starting to sort of find my place in everything, and I've established sort of my living here, and I got used to it. I would love for it to continue, honestly.